Hello and welcome. Today's video is the results and the review of a cooldown cycle test for the Ginetta G55. Did our first race with the Ginetta at Interlagos, and it was a great result, got the win, fantastic, but came away with probably more questions than answers. One of those questions I had, or some of those questions I had, were around the brakes. Now we can see here on the replay here from Interlagos, the front discs, they're glowing for quite a prolonged period of time, longer than I would expect to see them, longer than I'd like to see them, and longer than I think you would see in real life. So it got me thinking, well, I've probably in that case got the front brake ducts too closed off. But then got me thinking, well, but what temperature range is that? And all those questions that went with it. So I thought the best way to do this would be to try and do it in a way where I can show not just myself but show you guys as well the exact results that we're seeing and under what conditions. I didn't want to do it with a third-party telemetry software. I wanted to do it with the tools that Razer provide us. I think not everyone wants to go and download third-party software. Not everyone wants to have a second monitor, literally a second monitor running with traces and stuff coming in, and not everybody wants to be a genuine engineer. Some people just want to know and be able to look at the UI that Razer provide us, and then they can then make their own judgment call based on colours, which is, well, let's face it, when you're racing, that's what you've got. So I quite like that. So the test I come up with was going to the Daytona oval circuit and closing off all the brake ducts completely, running the ABS quite high, and just going out and doing 3 or 4 nice, easy, slow laps, not trying to get speed, but trying to build heat slowly into the braking systems of the car, both front and rear, equally as much as I can. So the reason I wanted to do that heat build up slowly is because I didn't want to have surface temperatures. I wanted to have a fully heat soaked system temperature. So if I just go out there and just go and drag the brakes for full throttle on for 30 seconds, that's going to get the heat up pretty quickly, but that heat's not necessarily going to have soaked into the entire system. So get it in there nice and slow, do 3 or 4 laps. Once it's in there and it's all fully soaked in, then basically drag the brakes up to maximum temperature, to the point actually where the car barely even stops. The brakes are so ineffective when they get to that range, which you'd never get to anyway, but when they get to that range of temperature, the car can barely even stop itself. So anyway, the plan is to do that, then park the car up. So the brakes at this point will be really hot. There's as hot as you'll ever see them. Then I'm going to park the car up and just leave the telemetry HUD on, and then get them in view on the camera, and also have it so that I can see the side of the car, so I can see the brake discs. And then I'm going to record that with the car stationary, and then literally play it back, and then log all the different cut-off points for colours, and also at the point exactly where the brake discs stop glowing, front and rear. And then we're going to see if it's different front and rear, or if it's the same front and rear, and likewise the disc glow threshold as well. So that's the plan. Without further ado, I'm going to get into the results first, because the video takes this a long time for it to cool down to nothing. So I'm going to go into the results first. We'll get into the review of that, and then at the end I'll show you the full replay of the test, because I think it's important that you have that, because when you've got if you're looking at a change of colour, like a transitional colour phase, it's quite subjective. So for openness, I'd like to share the entire test with you so that you can review it if you feel the need to or want to, and then you can move the numbers around if you feel the need to. But the numbers on the screen in the review, which we're coming into next, they're the numbers that I feel that I've witnessed. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling. Let's get into the review. We'll see you in a second. So here we are with the results of the test. Before I get into them, I just want to say I'm not going to come to any final conclusions in this. This test is merely a springboard for further understanding and further little tests, and hopefully, because I'll have a better understanding, there'll be less trial and error involved. I'll have a better knowledge of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it going forwards from here. So let's pretend now that the car has literally stopped. Everything is red hot. We saw the user interface in the game showing red brakes all the way down to 920 degrees Celsius. When they got to 920 degrees, they then moved into an orange color state, and it stayed that way until about 850 degrees. Then it got into yellow, down to about 760, when it then turned into a light green, and then into a proper true green at 700 degrees. And it held that all the way down to 180 degrees, where it then went into a turquoisey, sort of bluey green. At which point, at 150 degrees, it then moved into a light blue, and then when it got down to 100 degrees, it went into a true blue. I'm really cold now, buddy. I need some heat in me. But when I put the graphics on the screen, I had them as just blocks of colour next to the numbers there. And it didn't really show the range that you're playing with. So I've ended up actually scaling the ranges. So the ranges on there now, it's basically, when I did it, it was a pixel for every degree. So what you're seeing on there is a true ratio of how those ranges play out. Now, obviously, red's very high because it starts at 920 degrees and it goes all the way up to like 1300 degrees or something stupid, which you're never going to see. So the red looks massive, but actually, you know, you're not really going to be using it. If you sort of look down from orange down to the dark blue, that's what really matters here. And you can see there, it's quite clear. There's a lot of green there. But it's not quite as straightforward as you might think. So the brakes at Interlagos, with the setup that I ran, they stayed pretty green. They might have just started to go into that light green for a moment or two. But generally speaking, they were in the green, and that's what I was working to when I was changing the brake duct openings. But the warning tape there that's going across the true green section, that's the 380 degree glow threshold for the brakes. So at that point there, that's when they either start or stop glowing, according to if they're in, you know, getting hotter or cooling down. So you don't actually really have, you only really have just over half of the green to play with, I would say. So I'm going forwards, I'm going to be aiming to have my brakes at their coolest just at the threshold for the true green of about 180 degrees. And they will go higher at times. And I may also allow them to drop a little bit lower. But see, I don't mind them getting a little bit lower than 180 degrees, because if they fall into that sort of turquoisey, greeny colour, they heat up so quickly that if it's only a momentary dip, it's not going to make much difference at all. But I would like to try and keep the brakes around about like the 550 sort of mark, if I can possibly help it. If I can avoid going higher than that, then I would like to. Yeah. What I did find interesting though was that it was exactly the same thresholds, both the glow threshold and also for the temperature color ranges for both front and rear brakes. It didn't make any difference at all. So, which is why I've combined everything as one screen, because everything matched the same front and rear, to my eye at least anyway. And I found it interesting as well for the rear brakes, the glow threshold especially. because when you look at the car in the replay, the rear brakes are clearly a very different specification compared to the fronts, as you'd expect. I was expecting them to have a different glow threshold, but they're actually the same, which I found quite interesting, and it makes our life easier. And it might be it might be a conscious choice from Razor. I'm not really sure, but either way, from what I've witnessed, we can treat both front and rear the same, which makes our life much easier. So that's pretty much it, really. Hope you find it helpful, and if you do, you know, great. I'm going to leave you there now. We'll show you the full replay of the test next. But I'll say cheerio now. So yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting. And until the next time, we'll see you later.